and welcome to Hardware Heaven. Today I'm going to be doing a review of Final Fantasy XIII: A Lightning Returns. Now before I get into this review, there's a little disclaimer that I want to say. I normally don't have to do this sort of thing, but because of the nature of the fan base for the Final Fantasy franchise, I just feel like I should say I'm basing this review off the game and the game alone in relation to the Final Fantasy XIII and XIII-2 and entire XIII franchise. I'm not going to be comparing Lightning Returns to any other Final Fantasy game. I'm not going to be telling you whether it's the best or worst game in the series. I know Final Fantasy XIII has had a lot of stick in the past, so this is going to be a review based solely on Lightning Returns as a game in its entirety as a whole. Nothing else, nothing more. Just so you know. So I played Lightning Returns on Xbox 360, so this review will be based on the game on that console. I haven't had a chance to play it on PS3, so bear that in mind. So also to note, I'm relatively new to the Final Fantasy franchise, so I actually took the time out of my weekend before getting a hold of Lightning Returns to play Final Fantasy XIII and XIII-2. I clocked up about 10 hours on each, so 20 hours in total, to really get to grips with the story, learn about the background of all the characters, just that I really knew what to expect when encountering Lightning Returns. I also read endless breakdowns and synopsis of the game just so that I kind of got my head around the LC, the Pulseless C, the Fal'C, and all of that confusing stuff, and then all of the time travel and Sarah and Noel and what happened there. I kind of get it now. I understand what went on quite in depth actually, and have managed to explain it to quite a few people who haven't actually managed to pick up the games. However, Lightning Returns does a pretty good job in itself explaining exactly what happened in the previous games. Now I'm going to start by saying I actually really enjoyed this game. From the very beginning, I knew that I would love it. I really liked the changes in the combat. I really like how fast paced it is. I love the story. However, there are a few things that are a little bit game breaking in an experience, and I would definitely recommend playing this game on easy rather than normal. Because to be honest, you're not going to get that much satisfaction from actually completing a mob or a boss on normal difficulty, considering you don't actually get any of your XP or level ups from battles. It's more about completing side quests, exploring the world, doing various parts of the story, and essentially saving souls. You'll have a much better experience playing it on easy because you'll be able to get through it faster, you'll actually be able to complete the game without failing, and you just get to experience all of the story without having any of the things that drag you down. For example, you don't regenerate health in normal mode after a battle. You have to heal, but they've set a limit on how many potions and Phoenix Downs you can actually carry at a time, which is 6 to begin with, and it gradually increases up to something like 8 when you're halfway through the game. Now, that to me is quite annoying, because if you don't regenerate health after you finished a battle, but you're in a dungeon and you can only carry 6 potions, you have to really think about how you're spending your time, and you'll probably end up trying to avoid combat as much as possible, because all it really does is helps you encounter various mobs, and maybe you get a couple of items that you may want, but you don't actually get any XP or level up or get any extra stats from it. So it's kind of pointless battling random creatures and enemies that you encounter in the world. I also found the stagger system to be a little bit confusing and awkward to begin with. However, the entire stagger system has had a complete overhaul to make it better. It's quite confusing, but bear with me. So now instead of having a stagger bar as a percentage like you did in XIII and XIII-2, is now a stagger wave, much like a sound wave. It changes colour depending on how close you are to staggering an enemy. It's actually a lot harder to see. However, the stagger system is a lot more complex and in-depth, and I think it's amazing. So when you actually stagger an enemy, which you can do in a variety of different ways depending on their weaknesses, whether you stagger them with lightning, whether you stagger them with physical attacks or shielding or blocking and things like that, you can do it in a variety of different ways now. There's 2 stages of stagger. So you initially stagger them where they'll now take more damage and not be able to attack, but you can also knock them down, which is kind of like a double stagger, which I think is awesome. I just wish the stagger wave wasn't so awkward to see, but once they're staggered, it's a win-win. I really love the schemata system. The paradigm system in 13 and 13.2 was a little bit complicated. You had to consider all eventualities and all of your party members, which could be up to 3. So you had to bear in mind what every person's strength and weakness was, and using the Christerian system, you had to build those characters various ways to get various stats, which means they wouldn't be that good in various roles. So it became quite lengthy to actually organise that. But now, because you're only playing as Lightning, you get this schemata system, which basically means it's kind of like a loadout. You have different gear sets, different weapon sets, and different abilities depending on what warrior you want to play. If you want to build Lightning as this really awesome mage who has loads of magic and fire and lightning abilities with this really cool light armor and these really cool magical swords, you can do that. But if you want to build Lightning as this really kind of tanky paladin who has heavy armor, a massive shield, and a weapon that doesn't do much damage, but has really high dodge and armor and block and shield and all that good stuff, you can. And you can have 3 different schematas at a time and switch between them. And when you actually switch between them in combat, it's instant. You don't have any of these flashy animations where you've got to wait 10 seconds for someone to switch roles and get new items and abilities. It happens instantly, and I absolutely love it. Alongside the schemata system, you have the APB system, which is essentially your ability power bar. I made that up, but I think that's what it means. You can do a certain amount of abilities depending on how full your bar is. So if your bar is this big and your skill costs this much, you can do that many of the skills until your bar is empty. It works a lot like mana. A higher level or harder hitting ability will use more APB, and a lower hitting ability will use less. So you can do more of the lower ones or fewer of the harder hitting ones. You get it right. So the APB system has a separate bar for each of the schematas, so you can constantly be in combat, and they regenerate quicker out of combat. So you can do all of your abilities in, say, your Paladin schemata, switch to a mage, use all of your abilities in that one. By the time you switch all the way back to Paladin, your bar is most likely going to be full to be able to do all of those abilities or block or whatever you want to do all over again. It's so much faster paced, the combat feels so much more fluid, and it feels like a much more modern game rather than the turn-based combat that we've seen before. You can just constantly attack and block, and it's a lot more fluid, and I really, really love it. This game is a whole lot more open world than Final Fantasy XIII. If you didn't play Final Fantasy XIII 2, you'll know that that was a lot more open world, but Lightning Returns takes it to a whole new level. You can go wherever you want, whenever you want, and do what you want. If you want to spend an entire day of the days that you've got left in Final Fantasy XIII, saving people, completing quests, grinding mobs, you can do just that. If you want to travel all over the world to complete various different quests, you can do that as well. And I really, really like the options that you've got. Although the downside to this is that you are limited by time. Essentially, without ruining the story for you, you have a set amount of time to save the world. Essentially, you get the gist. And you start off with not enough time, and by saving people, you get this special power to increase the time that the world has left in order to save it. It's quite complicated, but you get it. So by doing these quests and completing these tasks, you get more time to save the world. However, by doing them, you're using your time rather than doing the main storyline. But you kind of need to do the side quests because that's how you get extra skills and level up and things like that, and your stats to make you stronger. And if you don't do them, you definitely will not be able to complete the bosses. So again, this is where I recommend you definitely play it on easy, because you're going to be able to complete those things faster, you're going to be able to kill mobs faster to get the gear that you want, and you're just going to overall enjoy the game a lot more by being able to play through the story faster, rather than like me, playing it on normal, getting 6 hours in, realising that you're going to fail because you don't actually have enough days left, and then actually managing to complete all of those 6 hours in about 2 hours on easy. So as you can see, I have very mixed feelings about this game, but overall a sense of happiness. I absolutely absolutely love this game. I love the combat, I love the gameplay, which was something that people really didn't enjoy, and me personally, in Final Fantasy XIII. They've definitely improved on that, but I feel like the dialogue and the speech and the text and the story is a little bit weaker than in previous games. It's like they've replaced the bad combat and bad running in a linear line for 20 hours with amazing combat and amazing open world and amazing quests. But then you've just got Lightning, who repeats herself about 3 times every time you accept a quest. Hope will tell her something and you'll have to regurgitate that information about 3 times before it sinks in, and you're kind of sat there staring at your controller like, why does she not get this yet? Why is she so dense? And Lightning just becomes this very kind of dull character that really just isn't paying attention, and you feel like she should be a lot more focused on her goals because it's so important that she is focused on her goals. But if you can get past some of the really badly written parts of the story and you just enjoy the game for what it is, you'll definitely have fun. If you like customizing various loadouts and really optimizing your stats and defeating bosses to get better times and points, you'll really love it. If you really like a fast-paced combat system where you'll get to go through the game, look at all the different areas, do the different bosses, all the side quests and experience the story, you'll definitely enjoy it. However, if you are an old-school Final Fantasy fan who really enjoys a well-written, in-depth storyline, you may find this a little lackluster. The time limits as well do limit you, and I would wholeheartedly, honestly recommend that you put your feelings about being an elitist hardcore gamer to one side and just play it on easy, because you'll have a much better time. Overall, Lightning Returns has very solid features and definitely improves on the previous game in the series. It's brought Final Fantasy to the modern age, and I really think this is a very good step in the right direction going forward into the future, hopefully with games like Final Fantasy XV. I'm really excited now to see what's next. I really think this was a great game and I very, very much enjoyed playing it. It was not a chore at all to clock hours and hours and hours into that game. It is a long story. There are a lot of quests that you can do. You can easily clock up to 50 hours playing Lightning Returns and still have things to do. So if you are looking for a long game to settle into and experience, this is definitely the game for you at this period in time. I'm going to give this game the recommended award because I do recommend that if you have been a fan of Final Fantasy and maybe you were let down a little bit by Final Fantasy XIII, definitely pick up this game because it will change your mind. It rounds up the entire story and it really has some great mechanics of the likes of Assassin's Creed and things like that, and you'll really enjoy jumping over cityscapes and rolling down hills, and the landscapes in the game are so amazing and the story really does round up really nicely. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye!